And finally, along comes Putin, who after, he got in the year 2000, as you know, but in 2007, at a meeting of the, I think, G20 in Munich, he made this famous speech in which he told the West, you cannot treat us this way. We refuse. You have to take into consideration our interests. We have geopolitical interests just as you do, and we will not stand for this kind of treatment. From that moment on, Putin became the bad guy for the West. Before that, in the press, it was kind of like, well, you know, who is Putin? Now we know it's Putin, and we don't like him at all. And he's tremendously popular here because he's seen as the man who brought Russia back, who stood up to the West, and in particular to the United States, and said, we will not allow this. We have our interests. And that's what Ukraine is really about. The New World Order, if you will, that was established when the Soviet Union disappeared, as seen by the United States, is a world order where there's one superpower. And that superpower is the one that everyone more or less has to respect and dance to that tune. The Russian view, as expressed by Putin, is that there is no such thing as a superpower. The world cannot be a unipolar thing. It has to be multipolar. There are interests, everyone have their interests. And we will not accept this. So that's where the real clash is. The Ukraine is about that. If, say from the very outset, when Ukraine started moving westward, it was clear that that's where it was going. If there had been some kind of an agreement signed that the Ukraine would not, for say 50 years, become part of NATO, nothing would have happened. Russia sees NATO as a threat. The Russians will say to you, why do you have NATO? There's no more Soviet Union. There's no more Warsaw Pact that you consider to be dangerous. Why NATO? NATO was created because of fear of what the Soviet Union might do. Well, there is no more Soviet Union. And yet, NATO, not only do you have it, but it's now on our borders, in Latvia and Estonia. Now you have the Ukraine going your way, and you're going to put NATO on our whole border with Ukraine? No, will not accept it. Crimea, the peninsula, with the city of Sevastopol, that's where the Russian fleet was always based. And now there's going to be the 6th U.S., or some kind of NATO fleet, will not accept it. Now, you could say to that, wait a minute, Ukraine has gone that way, it's their right. Sure it is. I take you back to 1962, when an independent country called Cuba and an independent country called the USSR agreed to place Soviet missiles in Cuba. Right? They had the right to do that, and there were American missiles in Turkey, right close to the Soviet Union. So good old Mr. Khrushchev said, oh, we're going to counter that. We're going to put our missiles in Cuba. As soon as the United States found out that there were going to be missiles there, in fact, some were already there, the U.S. said, what? No, we don't care about agreements. We see that as a threat to our national security. And we will sink your ships if need be, and if there's a war, there'll be a war. Well, they had to accept that, right? And Khrushchev backed off, and the missiles were taken out, and that was the end of that story. Well, NATO on Russia's border, for this particular government, is the same thing. They see NATO as a real danger. So I repeat, if there had been this thing about no NATO, here's a signed agreement, 50 years guaranteed by the United States, by everyone, there would have been no problem with Ukraine. But it's about who's boss? Who's boss? And it's back, it's that, now you ask for a strategy? Well, what kind of strategy can you have? It's only if both sides really understand that they can't do without each other. I mean, you take what's going on in the Middle East, ISIS. The United States has not been able to do anything about it. It's gotten worse and worse. Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran, alone, the United States has not been able to do anything. And it could do a lot if Russia were there. And that's one of the, you could do some kind of bargain here. Okay, you guys help us with this, and we'll help you with that. And back off a little bit on this Ukrainian thing, and kind of, you know, cool it. I guess Obama can't do it, because immediately he'll be jumped on for going soft on the Russians. And that'll be a blow to the Democratic Party, and that means that Hillary won't be elected. So, you know, you can't do that. Putin is not going to back down. They have to find a deal where neither side loses face. They have to find a win-win. And I don't know if they're looking.
Russia and President Putin have been misrepresented by the American press and by the government. What does Russia think that America wants?
Oh, well, you know, again, it's difficult for me to say what Russia thinks, but
right.
what public opinion polls tend to show is that the overwhelming majority of Russians believe the United States to be the most threatening country to their lives. In other words, they believe that if the United States could, it would wipe them out. And that if the United States people say, you know, American president, that we would like to see a strong, democratic Russia. Nah, that's not true. They don't want to see a strong Russia. They want to see a weak Russia. In fact, they'd like Russia to fall apart like the Soviet Union did. That's what they really want. They want to take over our wealth, our natural resources, our oil and our gas and our metal. That's what they want. That is the feeling about most people. That's what they say.
What reasons do they have to feel that way?
I would say it's what they're more or less told by the media.
The Russian media?
Of course. Of course. By Russian television, which is very anti-American.
Why?
Why is it anti-American? Well, because, I believe I said this at the beginning of our meeting, because the leadership of Russia in the person of Mr. Putin does not believe that you can trust the United States. He said this. You know, there was a time when Putin was seriously discussing joining the European Union and becoming part of NATO. He was told point blank, no, we don't want you guys. You're too big, you're too this, you're too that. No. So the door was slammed in his face. They had certain agreements that were not respected. And the NATO issue is one of them. So his feeling, and you know, he's a guy, I know him relatively well. That is to say, I've spoken to him twice for 1 hour, one-on-one. And he's a tough cookie. But he's not stupid. And he feels very strongly. He said, you cannot trust them. They're just figuring out a way to, to screw you. That's what they're doing. And, you know, his reasons are, he'll say, well, look at this, look at this, look at this. And he said, look at Ukraine. There was a deal made on the 22nd of February, 2014. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Germany, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of France, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Poland were all there. They signed the guarantee. And then what did they do? They backed off, and they let the revolution happen, and they all went that way. And I'd been promised that this was the way it would happen gradually, that there would be normal elections. And so he said, how can you trust them?
Are you in sympathy with Putin on that?
I don't like him.
Why not?
I don't like him. He's not my cup of tea. I just, you know, he's not a pal. I understand what look, he's a patriot. He feels very strongly about his country. He wants it to be a great, strong country. In that sense, you know, he's just as much of a patriot as Reagan was, of America. He's much more intelligent than Reagan, but that's a different thing. but he can be very cold and quite ruthless. I don't like him because I don't think he's a kind man at all, and because I think that he's he's an unforgiving man.
Is he vindictive?
Huh?
Is he vindictive?
I think so.
In what way?
Well, you say something publicly about him that he really dislikes, and you're going to have problems. Not going to put you in jail. No. But, you know, if you're in the media